LIGHTBOB TV, episode 6. Today's Tuesday, and we're talking about fixtures and fixtures intelligence that went from and it went from a hardware, basically a piece of hardware that we needed, and now it becomes more like a part of a system. And that's what we're going to look at today. Fixtures used to deliver light, and that was it. Like we had a fixtures and it delivered light. Now it start to deliver whole kinds of information. And the cool part about it is that um, this information is also something that help us to do other tasks, and we can instead of having all those device, we can with the fixtures have more data, and they're no longer just part of a fixture, but they're talking back and forth and sending data to a system. Computer could be a device, could be a mainframe, and this data is what today makes it more interesting. And also where um, the part where people still think that lighting it's only an object or a catalog number. In reality, it's a whole technology platform. These little boards that are inside the fixtures are very contains a lot of technology, and believe it or not, uh, some of that technology, is very powerful. Um, I see people all the time selecting fixtures like it was 1995. Like in 1995, we had a fixtures and that was it. Like we didn't have any layer technology. We didn't have any integration problems. We would have a fixtures, and then later, if you wanted to have a dimming system or not, that was just an add-on. But today, it's not the same. Today, when you think about a fixture, you have to put a little bit more thought on what is it going to be, what is it going to serve, where is it going to be installed, and what's going to happen with it with time. Like what are the different specification that you're going to need, in a couple years, or is it going to be compatible, or or and and I would say what's the main cause of this is basically the fact that we had LED coming in, uh, and LED is classified as a solid state. And like I was telling you yesterday, uh, this is nothing that we saw before. Before we had a fixtures, it was just a little piece of hardware that we connect with another piece of hardware, and we stick it into the electricity, and we had light. Today, if you take an LED, you stick it in the outlet, it's not going to work. It's going to explode and it's going to burn, and that's it. So the LED accelerated everything because like no longer we could treat the LED or lighting as it was before, because we had a lot of other factors, as we mentioned yesterday, that came into the our life, and now all this electronic is embedded inside the fixtures, which before we didn't have any electronics. The only thing that came later was a little device, a thermal detector, that if the fixture, or if you put a bulb that was too hot or too big in wattage, the fixture would shut off. And that was about the only component that was added to the system and that was added because of a safety feature, not because they wanted to control fixtures or that they want to get data, or it was just that all the bulbs were built on the same frame, and it was very easy to put 100 watt in a 40 watt fixtures. And what had happened, of course, there was more light, but more light meant more heat. More heat meant that, if the fixture was not in a proper way or was not installed in a proper area, it could create some fires and damage. It would dry out the sockets, and the sockets insulation would get out, and then the wire would touch the metal, cause a short circuit, and so, as before, like I was telling you, we used to add the control system later. We would say, okay, let's do the layout, let's bring the leg to either a junction box or to the panel, and then we'll decide if we run the leg to a switch, or see if we run it to a remote dimmer. But when we started to work with LED, that was no longer the case. We had to start thinking about, okay, so what are we going to do with that light? Because this light is no longer just turning on or off or dimming 0 to 100. This light can do a multitude of other things that as an electronic device that can be controlled, and also that, unlike the other previous technology, dimmer, incandescent, or fluorescent, these technology didn't like to be switch often or dim or so forth. Some incandescent was reacting really well with dimming. They would extend the life of it by dimming 5%, 10%, and that was it. But sometimes some of the system would give you a bump to 100 and back. Some would, and there was all kinds of things that was happening that the light bulb didn't like. So that's why when we start to think about the old system versus the new system, the LED gave us a wide array of control function that they were not available with the traditional incandescent. And the technology of the LED compared to the incandescent move way faster than, like I said, the previous technology, uh, because now we had not only the lighting people that were involved, and before it was very defined. You had the lighting people, you had the control people. Now suddenly you have everybody together. So no longer you needed uh, to think about control engineers. They were part of the team, and they had to be part of the team because when we were designing a fixtures, there was no way we could not think about the driver. And now the driver and the fixture and the LED, I mean, the combination needed another combination, which is the control. Now that we have the early days of controls were 0 to 10 volt. We had DMX, and that was about it. The control was done with wires attached to them. And the reason was simple, is because the device that were controlling the LED, meaning the dimmers, were the electronic was not compatible with the electronic of the light bulbs. So you always had discrepancy, and you had all kinds of problems because the way that they were dimming, the technology they were using to dimming for dimming was not compatible. Nowadays, the standards have risen, and the dialogue between the dimmer and the LED light bulbs are more standard, and there's way less problem that was before. And all of that, thank God, help us to bring us to another level, because by being able uh, to modulate the light now, um, before we needed a lamp, we need a ballast, uh, we need we need heavy equipment. It was not like a very light. We need limited. We were very, very limited and controlled. Some fixtures were taking, let's say, starting at 10%. It was really hard to some source. I mean, was really hard to dim under 1%. Some had toxic material. The ballasts were very toxic or inside, and some were just not dimmable. No matter what you try, they were not dimmable. So again, the technology was very well. We did what we could at the time we had it, but nowadays it's a total different history, a total different game, and the reason why is because we have evolved with the technology. Now manufacturers start to understand that they gotta integrate everything: the LED, the driver, the circuit board, the dimmer, and they have standard. And also, what they did is they brought the miniaturization. So now you don't need to have a big ballast or a big dimmer. Everything fits in the size of a quarter. And the add-on feature that we added to all this is very simple, is that everything is programmable, because it's logic based, and it's very easy to assign different program to excuse me, to a light, or to a series of light, and because it's just one and zero. So that is something that is helping us nowadays. Um, Also, we have the privilege of having everything connected together, meaning that you have light that talks all the same protocol. And with one program you can control 100 lights without having to add any hardware or nothing, because of what the capability that are inside. And also, since we're in that same vein of control, and the LED permits it to be very adaptive, meaning that you can you can go into different type of weather. You can go in different type of environment. The vibration area is not as sensitive as an incandescent or as a compact fluorescent. So we went from lighting device to now we can call it mini computer. So every light fixtures is becoming with a mini computer. So they have all these features that can be done, and and control. So basically, the since now the light have a little brain of their own. They have this little printed circuit board. They can have like different sensors, like motion sensors, daylight sensors, occupancy sensors. You can even have um, gyro sensors. So if the light fall down or something, it will shut off, and all kinds of all kinds of data can be collected because of all these sensors that are part of it. We can collect data such as usage. We can control data such as energy, how much energy, uh, behavior, how often did it turn on, how often did it turn off, what are the time of the day that are turn in, turn off, and so forth. lighting fixtures can today tell you how your space is being used, and maybe in residential we don't really need that, but when you have you're in hospitality, you're in retail, you're in even in medical, it will help you to gather some data that will improve the performance, save energy, and do all kinds of cool things. So the fixtures are not no longer the fixture are an isolated device in the middle of a corridor. No, now it can do a lot of things. They can talk to each other like a mesh system. They can sync the behavior. So if let's say a series of lights start to dim because it's very bright outside, well, all the lights in the hallway are going to start dimming at the same time. So that way you have control, and the fixture talk among themselves. So that way you don't need to have somebody monitoring, say, oh, okay, or a computer or. So the fixture as a system now are are working for you and are working for the owner, and they are generating. How could I say that? They're generating their own pay. They as they are not just a device anymore that turn on and off. If nobody's in the area for such a time, they turn off. If somebody goes to the bathroom and it takes quite a time, it may dim because it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and so forth. So um, the 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 function that we used to ask or to have from just a lighting device, and now the function that we have from this electronic system is totally different. And and part of it is because the way that they talk to each other, and you probably remember that, we had when I was a kid, they had such a thing as a clicker, and it would turn the light on, the light off. And then we came with the infrared. Infrared, you needed to have the light pointing in a direction, and it was very simple. Then came radio frequency. So now we had some uh, wireless function, we had broader range, and all of that was again control a set of lighting. Was That was not the smart lighting yet. Now RF and IR are still in the game of intelligent fixtures, but now we have different protocol such as Zigbee, which is a mesh network, and that each fixtures talk to each others. So they have a special chip manufactured by Zigbee, and then they talk to each others. And then you have a controller, a series of controllers that controls the light. And by themselves, if they're connected to, let's say, a motion sensor or a lumen, how do you call it, daylight sensor, they will dim or they will, shut off depending on the time of the day. And all this is because of the little Zigbee chip that also has program in it, and you can makes the fixture way more intelligent. And in the same vein as Zigbee, we also have Bluetooth. Now, the difference between Zigbee and Bluetooth is the range. Bluetooth, you need to be very, very close, and it's very easy to integration. Zigbee needs a little bit more work, and it needs a little more special treatment because it's a proprietary protocol compared to Bluetooth. Bluetooth is too, but Bluetooth is more open. And in the same in the same how could I say, in the same area, you also have Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi has more data sharing. Like it will send data back and forth, and also Wi-Fi can be on the network or independent from the network. So, and I'm there's also other protocol, and the idea here is I just want to let you know that part of what's inside the fixture today is not just resistor and transistor and microchip, but also all kinds of device that can talk back and forth, and um, that can that makes the fixture more intelligent. And no matter what the language the fixture uh, the fixture communicate, it's it's basically all the same. Uh, they what we're trying to do is to save energy and have the maximum control over the fixture and get some data from the fixture so that we can optimize the utilization. And this is where when we bring more technology to a project, on the downside, um, we have more points of failure. And again, I love technology. I love to specify. I love to learn. I love to program. But it is a reality that the more point of failure that you bring into a system, the more vulnerable it becomes, right? Also, what it does is that it it makes you um, very uh, dependent on software. So if you have any protocol, that means that you need to communicate with it with some kind of a software. And a software means that you need some piece of hardware, a computer, a phone, a tablet, and etc., etc. And now, what we're talking about, when we start to talk about that, now we're talking about compatibility. We start to have compatibility issue because some system works on Unix, some work on. So you see how our little our little feature now becomes a whole ecosystem, right? Because who talks about anyone that talks about software talks about update. So now you have to have a way to update your system. You have to have a way to update your fixture. And last but not not last but not I don't remember what the word says, but the last thing that and that happens to me sometimes. The last thing that all of this brings is, of course, it is the cybersecurity issue. Um, and what do you need, and how you need to protect your system, and how it has to be independent, and so forth and so forth. Um, but all of that, you know, the all this intelligence and all this work, the good thing is that today we can integrate it with all the other systems, which in the past they were running all as independent system, and it was very fragile, and and because it was not designed properly. It was not designed to interface with the others, which now, like I said earlier, companies are designing with certain standard and protocol, with certain interconnectivity, with intelligent, like focus, how they can get some information from certain sensor to detect if there's somebody in the room. Will turn the light on and off or dim them at 50%, but also it will work on the heat and if on the HVAC, you know, and also maybe if somebody is not there and it's a sensitive area, it will arm it for with security. So all these systems now are getting more and more intelligent, and the beauty of it is that it becomes less and less complicated to do. The one of the good thing is that since it's a system, but they are uh, independent on their own. When one device stop, the rest doesn't stop, right? Um, the other thing is that sometimes when we want to control, it gives you a bit more flexibility, because before you had to have your whole computer, which now you can have your phone and you can change the the lighting, you can change the setup, you can change the layout, and this is a very good feature, because in the past we had different protocol, and controlling lighting system, you had to go into a certain app. Then you wanted to control the HVAC, you needed another app, or you needed another computer. And if you wanted to go in security, well, most security systems were never smart at all. You had to just take a dry contact and manage it somehow, somewhere. And just imagine the log you had to keep to make sure that all the firmware and all the software were up to date. And I remember working for an audio video company as a consultant, and the customer service, I would say 50% of the time, that was the question they have: is your software updated? Do you have what version do you have? Oh, okay. Well, let me, because even then they could update it remotely. They would have to remote update the software. They would have to do all kinds of gymnastic to get the system. Okay, now we're gonna reboot, and then we're gonna restart it, and you should be okay. And then you didn't hear anything from the client. Sometimes it was something else. Sometimes they didn't have access to it, and so that was a big problem. The other thing also is that you could also call a company and they no longer service the system. They don't exist anymore. They went bankruptcy. So now you have a whole bunch of technology that is proprietary, and you have a control system, and let's say the motherboard of the computer blew up, or somebody dropped the control and it doesn't work anymore. So you got to, like, I mean, it was very, very difficult to fix, because the system at the time, and trust me, these systems are were not cheap, because of course, who says technology, and everybody knows that the computer, in the 80s or in the 90s were like $5,000-$10,000. But imagine running a system from the 80s on a computer today. You can't, because they don't even speak the same language. So when we're talking about lighting and the ecosystem, we have to think about that too. We have to think about how is it gonna age in time? How is it gonna go, from something that is very stable today to something that we don't know in 5 years, 10 years? So again, the 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 choice we're making today are very, very important because they're going to affect, the future. So we're not only, when we're working with technology today, we're not only choosing a fixture that looks good, right? We need a fixture that first does what we need. We need a fixture that give us the type of lighting that we decide. Is it a directional? Is it a general diffuse? Then we need to have the right, accessory. Then we need to have the right mounting. Then we need to have the right, positioning. We have the right quantity. But then also we're gonna start to think about, oh, okay, now we as a fixture that part of a system, you know, we have to understand that it's gonna have to communicate with others. It also what is the project intent? Who what other technology do we have on our project that we're gonna use this fixtures to the data from this fixtures to control it or to talk with the system, or data from the system to talk to that lighting fixture. So it's not a short-term behavior. Now we have to think about in the future, what is it going to be? What is it going to talk to? How is it going to walk? And all this, has an impact on a lot of things. The first impact, it has an impact on our on the people behavior, how they're going to react in this space. Sometimes it's very stressful when you walk into a space and you don't have switch on the wall and you see the light starting to flash or to dim or to shut off. So that is one impact. The other one is, how about the energy management? uh, what's our strategy for energy management? Well, like what do we, what's our plan to, how do we gonna have our payback? And this is more and more a big point of concern because we, first of all, price keep going up, and we want to make sure that we're not using our fixture for when we don't need them. So we're not wearing out our fixtures. Now, what about the building automation? Energy saving is one part, but what about, like I was saying earlier, security? What about energy saving? What about dimming? What about automation? And all of these little feature that, you know uh, flood detection. I mean, any of those um, sensor that you can think are part of that automation, and also has an effect on lighting. Um, the last thing is also the maintenance. I'm big on maintenance, and we talked a lot about maintenance left and right. Uh, but how does all this technology now become? How do we maintain this? Sometimes we will have our own maintenance crew. So that means that they need to learn and they need to find out and they need to get educated on all the requirement. Sometimes we will work with third party, and that again is always a challenge because uh, there's staff rotation, a new person come in, he doesn't know how this building is designed, what kind of systems are in. That creates all kinds of situation where if we didn't take the right decision at the beginning, and if we didn't document whatever work we're doing, that could be quite a challenge. Uh, Now, when we think about the lighting and 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 how we are selecting the product, suddenly our our strategy are different. We no longer just choose a product because it is aesthetic. We no longer just choose a product because it fulfilled uh, uh, usage. Now we have to think about how is it going to work in our system? How are we going to include smart lighting in our project, right? And this is a very this is something that needs to be talked about from the get-go, because if we don't talk about this, then what's going to happen is that somewhere down the line we're going to have incompatibility problem. Some fixtures or some system is not talking, and now we got to change this, and now we got to change that, and then this is where all the time you put in to design your system, if you would have known from the get-go, and if you would have put the right effort, and that you had the right product, you wouldn't be wasting it at the end because somebody else, or uh, you know there's a new system that we never been tested, and we want to integrate this into the system. And this happened more often than you think, because just think of all the systems that they're in the house. There's CCTV, there's HVAC, there's security, there's lighting, there's outside irrigation system. All those systems are somehow or another integrated into one technology, or will be, and then you need to have an overview and understand what's going on, because your part is as important as the other people. And any technology that doesn't have a structure, you know, is just a recipe for madness. Wow, that was fun. I start my career in lighting control, and I can tell you that even today, after all this time, it's very, very hard to focus or to understand everything that's going on. Lately, I've been working on PoE lighting, and it is another beast, and I'm very, very excited, because now and I'll do a special segment on PoE, but from the technology that I'm used to, I have to learn everything in a different way, and I gotta find the source that are different, and I gotta find the fixtures that are different, and I gotta find the system and the computer. So it is becoming more and more complex, and you know the beauty of it is that I don't think it will, oh it will stop. I don't think it will stop. I think the integration is going to become more and more real. Um, when I was 20 years old, I was part of a group called Canadian Automation Association of Building Automation, CABA. And we were talking about building automation and smart city. And honestly, I can say for myself that I never saw it coming. I thought, well, this is gonna be in 100 years. Why? Because everything was so segmented that to unify everything was almost an impossible task. Today, as I'm speaking to you, I see this happening in front of my eyes. I see everything coming in to a whole, and more rapidly than I can think of, with AI, with the Internet of Things, with the fact that we have more and more connected device in our home, and that the miniaturization makes it, and like I was telling you, the way that the control chips are smaller and smaller, I mean, hardware is becoming smarter and smarter. So there is a great future for us, and there's a great future for humanity in lighting and control and integration. And I don't think we'll run out of job anytime soon. Um, and that's a great thing. So tomorrow, Wednesday, we're gonna talk about something that is oh, it's right there. We're gonna talk about the hardware. Um, yeah, tomorrow we're gonna talk about hardware. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure